Part B of the assessment for Year 12 for Assessment 3 was to look at this graph and then to go through and be able to answer a series of questions that relate to the graph. So the first one was to, as it says here, is to label the three energy systems. So we know that A, because of its slow start and slight increase, it's going to be the aerobic system. B, after a short period of time, has a high spike and then it's flat. That's the lactic acid system. And C, because it drops away so quickly, is going to be the ATP system. That's question 1. Question 2 then said, describe the role that oxygen plays in each energy system. So some of the answers we're looking for here was, for the aerobic system, is that the body supplies oxygen to the working muscles. Oxygen can be used to break down glycogen into ATP, and this process is continually repeated. So that's the role that oxygen plays in the aerobic system. Even though there is no requirement of oxygen in the other two anaerobic systems, students still needed to mention them. So they need to mention that the lactic acid system, oxygen is not required to break down glycogen, and in the ATP system, oxygen is not required to break down ATP. They needed to mention these two systems. Question 3 says, in the lactic acid system, what happens to the athlete if they continue to exercise at 80% of their maximum effort? So in the lactic acid system, if they continue to exercise at 80% of their maximum effort, what's going to happen eventually is that lactic acid is going to build up in the muscles, which then will lead to fatigue and exhaustion. Eventually, the athlete will have to slow down or even stop. So they're the things that for 3 marks we're looking at. We're looking at some fatigue, some exhaustion, and having to either slow down or stop. Question 4 says, why does the ATP system drop so dramatically? If we go back to the graph and have a quick look, you'll see here, why does it drop so dramatically? So if we go back to our understanding and our knowledge here, we know that phosphocreatine, which is the ATP-PC system, it's exhausted in the body after 10 to 12 seconds at 95 to 100% of maximal effort. So that's why it drops so drastically, because it's been exhausted very quickly from the high intense effort. And the last question says, after 90 seconds, which energy system becomes the predominant energy system and why? If we go and have a look after 90 seconds, so there we are there. We know that these two systems, so the lactic acid system and the ATP system, are on their way down. They've been exhausted. It's the aerobic system that's on its way up. So we look at our response here. It just says that after 90 seconds, which energy becomes the predominant energy system and why? The predominant energy system is the aerobic system. This is because the ATP supplies in the ATP-PC system and the lactic acid system have been exhausted and only can be resupplied at rest. If the athlete wishes to continue exercising, the aerobic system or the aerobic energy system can continue to supply the working muscles with ATP. So that's just a very general or rough overview of what need to be included in the answers. I will then also scan a couple of responses of the boys this evening when I get home from school to give you an idea of what some of the more answers were. But these are some of the key points that were needed in each of your answers. And of course, students would have expanded on these. And that was part B.